then you can I don't know if your years in Carolina you said y'all or not, but
Oh, I
that's
use y'all. Y'all is a really, okay. That is so helpful. That contraction is beneficial because in English, usually it will be like you guys or hey everyone. No, y'all is like, at least I don't know if I say it as much as I type it, but I type it nearly every day.
Hello, welcome to the United Soccer Lounge. My name is Riley James. Thank you so much for watching our program today. It's always a great day for me when I welcome another media member onto the program. And that's what we did today. Jessica Charman, who is a fantastic commentator for the USL Super League and the USL Championship for both Peacock and ESPN Plus, respectively. She does something insane to me by calling 3 to 4 games over the course of one weekend. So I asked her the very natural questions that I have. How do you keep all of your information straight? How do you even plan to prepare that much for each club? And then how do you keep your voice up for 8 to 10 hours of television? And she has a fantastic and very unique answer, which I found insane in the moment, but reflecting on it now, I think it's pretty smart for who she is. To the last question, I've asked the same, like, how do you keep your voice up question to people who have done World Cups. You know, John Strong, JP Delagamma, both for Fox. And they gave me, like, a long laundry list of things that they do. Jessica has a very short and simple answer, which I've never heard before, so be on the lookout for that over the course of the episode. She was a member of the Charlotte FC commentary team in the color role for their first 3 seasons in Major League Soccer, and now she is here in USL, doing both the Super League and the Championship. So a fantastic addition to the team this year for the USL, and one of my favorite guests that we've had on the program. I told you at the beginning of this season we want each and every show to be my new favorite, and that's what we've done so far. So it's been a really great start to the year, and Jessica is doing really great things in the USL, and we cannot appreciate her enough for making time in a hotel room to do this. So we're thankful the hotel Wi-Fi held out to be able to finish this interview. But again, I don't want to keep you very long. It's a longer episode, so thank you so much for watching this show. You can subscribe to it on goals.tv, like it, share it with your friends. Please make sure to subscribe to Goals YouTube account. Other than that, I think we're good. So please enjoy this interview with Jessica Charman. Please welcome to the program, friend of mine, soon to be friend of yours. You might hear her on television calling games for the USL Championship and the USL Super League. Please welcome to the show, Jessica Charman. Thank you so much for making time for the program, and how are you?
I'm absolutely delighted to be able to make time for the program. I am doing very well. Thank you for asking. And yeah, love the work. So it's exciting to be included among many amazing people that you've had up here.
Well, look, it's one thing to interview a player or a coach, right? Like it is, you kind of know the rules, you know what you can do, you know what you can't do. When you interview someone in the media field, it's incredible because all of the rules go away and you get to talk with someone else who is literally designed to talk back to you, which is a really great thing. So, Jessica, you are in a hotel right now. You're traveling, you're doing games all over the place. I cannot appreciate you making time in the middle of all this for us. It really is a fantastic thing that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's my dream job. So I think that when you are living your dream, as you probably know as well, it's all about making sure you stay humble, making sure you always give other people your time. If there's one piece of advice I give to people that want to do this, it's about always making sure you remember your why and staying grounded, rooted, making time in other ways. Because the biggest thing about getting a platform is to make sure you use your platform the correct way. And that's something that is very important to me.
And you've got such a platform in a country that is foreign to you. You've been in the United States for a long time, but still, like you can hear it in your voice. You're English, and you have a lot of English tendencies about you after talking to you for the last couple of weeks in preparation for this. Like it's a really cool thing that you're kind of in that between. But you know, you and I have had conversations about USL wanting to Americanize you. So what have you done to ingrain yourself in our culture and try to uh, make Jessica more American?
Well, firstly, I must be doing a good job because I interviewed for a English-based opportunity recently, and they said, "Look, we love you, but we are going to have to un-Americanize you a little bit." So I think it's so funny for me in this position where I speak to my friends that I grew up with in England, and they say to me, "Oh, Jess, you're going so American. Oh, Jess, you've got a little twang to your voice." And then I speak to American people, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, I love your accent. Oh, you stayed so English." And so I think I'm in that unique position where maybe I am a little American for English people, but still very English for American people. So when it comes to Americanizing myself, I will say that the league has been very good with me. They accept me for who I am, but when you have an American audience, I have to be intelligent about where my work is being marketed to. And I don't want to come across as a Euro snob. And that is something that I've had to be mindful of my entire career is just because I'm using words that are from England, I never really understood how they could be interpreted by certain people, by certain audiences, never my intention. But when you take that big step back and start to think about it, you're like, yeah, actually, if I'm throwing football around all the time, or if I'm using, certain words, terminology that maybe comes across in a certain way, maybe it will isolate fans. So I think making sure I stay authentic to myself. Sometimes I can't help it. Sometimes there's certain words that drop in, but making sure I have like a thesaurus of words where if I drop an English term, the next time I utilize that sort of meaning, I'll throw an American one in there. The only one, the league, this one hurt me a little bit. It was very hard to say when I called the Florida Derby. That was extraordinarily difficult for me. And I posted the highlights on Facebook. It's mostly Facebook, obviously, as a lot of my former friends from high school, things like that. They were all like, oh my gosh, what are you saying? But that's the one. The only one that I've struggled with. Other than that, I feel like I'm doing quite a good job.
No, and Derby's one of those ones where you guys say it better than us. Like Derby is an awesome word. And there's a few words in the different dialects of between England and the United States, like I struggle to even say it sometimes, but aluminium instead of aluminum. Like that's a better way to say that word. You guys have really been
Yeah, but
like
luckily I don't have to talk about that on air. Luckily, that's not one that's coming up on a Super League game. Hopefully, I would be worried about what we were talking about. What did I say the other day? Gary Bailey called me out on it the other day. I said acclimatize, and you would say acclimate, right?
whoa,
I
that I
think that
didn't know
that would
that
be the
one.
way. How would you like?
That's a new. I've never heard
I
you
was
guys say
saying,
that
yeah,
word.
like she's going to take time to acclimatize. Yeah, I said she's got to acclimatize to the league. And Gary looked at me and he was like, we're going to talk about that at halftime. So I got a little slap on the wrist from my dear friend Gary Bailey, who Gary is the one that you'll hear on a lot of Super League games with a very unique accent because he is English born, South African raised, living in the United States, but he's been here a lot longer than me. So he keeps me sweet on my terminology. So I love working with him because he acts as like a buffer because he understands me, but he also understands the Americans. So Gary has been very helpful as a resource for me.
It is acclimate. I will stand my ground on that one as an American. It is acclimate. But no, it's the new one. I've never heard you guys say that word before, which is really interesting. Jessica, you regularly call 2 to 3 games a weekend, sometimes four in a weekend. I do this. I've called games on the radio before, not nearly to the extent that you do. There's such a massive respect that people have for like people in your position call games over multiple days, call games in the same day. What do you do to keep your voice up and make sure you're just as clean and clear for the first game as you are the second game that day or the fourth game that weekend?
Well, firstly, I think I'm very, very fortunate with the natural voice I was given. I feel like my natural voice is quite raspy, which means that even if I'm struggling a little bit, it's not as differentiating for some people that maybe have a slightly different voice to me. Luckily, now you mentioned radio. I used to work in radio. Calling a radio game is a lot more words than a TV game. So there'll
Oh
be
my
moments
goodness. Yeah.
you pick and choose when to lay out in television, to rest, to recuperate. I think being very choosy with my words and when to speak is also something that I'm still getting better at coming from that radio background. So learning that the pictures are telling a story, that I have to find that balance of laying out versus always wanting to do the play by play. So that's really helped as I've learned to pace myself through a game slightly differently with television. But honestly, I think I'm really genetically fortunate. I see people having to use throat coat, people drinking tea. I'm here swigging a coffee. When do I kick off? In like 3 hours, I'll be calling Tampa Bay versus DC. I'm chilling. I eat whatever I want. Yes, I'm not trying to say that like uh I'm unprofessional, but I think I'm just very fortunate that I have always had a voice. And I think maybe that comes from my background of, I was a hustler from a very young age, calling games, always doing as many games as I could. So maybe it's also about that muscle memory of doing it. I do keep some cough drops in my bag, but no, I've never really had an issue as of yet. So 4 games this weekend. We'll see. Anything can happen, right?
I talked to John Strong. He did the American broadcast of all the World Cup matches, the last
Yep.
couple of men's World Cups, and he helped out on the women's side too. And just to hear him, especially for the Qatar World Cup, he was calling games 3 out of every 4 days, sometimes 4 out of 4 days. Like he was struggling towards the latter part of the group stage. Finally got a
I
respite
think
towards.
the hardest bit though, versus the actual, for me, the physiological voice thing is just the prep work and the sheer amount of work that goes into calling a game and making sure that you give games 3 and 4 as much attention as 1 and 2. So I think it's more, for me, it's mental exhaustion versus physical exhaustion that I've struggled with so far.
And that's a great point. That leads us into another question. It's almost like you have my notes, which I guess you do. But
Who said I read them? Who said I read them? Maybe I'm off the cuff.
But no, shout out John Stark. He's a friend of mine, a friend of all the things that we do over here. Getting ready to do 2026 here in the United States. Lots of travel in it for him. But yes, the preparation, right? You're preparing for what feels like 8 clubs in a weekend and keeping all of their information straight, not mixing anything up, and obviously giving the attention like you just said. What is Jessica's key to preparation over the week to make sure she has a fantastic weekend?
I think that's a really, really great question and something that I'm still learning little ways to get better. I've personally fallen on Google Docs and having a separate Google Doc for each of the games. Seems to work at the moment, knock on wood. I think the biggest one I struggle with is coaches' calls. So we get amazing access at USL, which we're very fortunate with. A lot of people overseas, when I talk to them about the access we have, they're like, wow, they really like spend their time. They give you 30 minutes every game to chat with you. Yeah, no, we do. And that's something I'm very, very fortunate about. But there will be times in the middle of a game where you're like thinking back and something happens and you're like, oh, they talked about not wanting to concede a goal first. And then in your head, you're like, oh my God, was it them? Or was it one of the other 7 coaches I've talked about? So what I've learned to do in my Google Docs is have very specific notes about the things that I'm going to utilize in a coach's call in the broadcast. And that is kind of annoying. Like it's disappointing at times because maybe there were other great nuggets, but I focus on 5 nuggets and those are the only 5 nuggets that I'm going to remember. Even if I think there's a connection, I'm not going to take the risk, because the worst thing I can do when a coach is like respectful enough to sit down, be honest and speak to me is blur my words. So I do that. And then what I really try and do is have my basic outline for every team. So I have the rosters that I prepare in a certain way with the numbers. All of that is ready by T-1 throughout the week. And then I just focus game by game. So today I have a 7 p.m. game. That is all I'm thinking about right now. Once that game is off, the 10 p.m. game starts. And fortunately, because I prepared throughout the week, there's only a few fine-tuning things I need to do with my notes and my prep work. So blocking it up out front and then fine-tuning. And then, like I say, being very, very diligent in making sure I nail my coaches' calls, because we are so fortunate to have that access and no one wants to screw that up.
Right. And being able to get coaches week of is the most difficult thing. My line of work is a little bit different. Obviously, we're interviewing them. It's a scheduled time and it's a scheduled release date. You're getting them in the middle of a prepared week, and you're hearing from them kind of off the record, but kind of on the record, obviously not being recorded, but you're taking notes like a journalist, right? Like people forget broadcast journalists are still journalists, and to bring that into a broadcast, bring that into your commentary is an incredible thing. You mentioned the kind of the preparation process and the routine. Just looking at one game, ignoring kind of the other ones, but like, what is the order operations to prepare for a match? The coach's call, the player bios, everything. How do you compile it together, and how do you keep it straight on game day?
Yeah, I start with extended highlights of previous games. The fortunate thing about my position, particularly with USL Super League right now, is I've been calling games the entirety of the season, and I'm calling games every single week. So usually I'm up to date on a lot of that. That is what's really tough about the championship right now, because with my schedule, I can't be on championship games regularly. Sometimes I'm literally going a couple of months between championship games, which means I'm not as on top of it as I would like to be. So relying on those extended highlights to just give me that big picture overview of recent games is really important. Then I'll dig into the rosters, the players. What's beautiful about Super League again now, earlier on in the season, it was tough because I was having to put together. Now I mostly have structure of everything, and it's just about updating the numbers. So that comes next. Then we'll get a coach's call, usually T-1, T-2. The majority of the coaches are really, really, really brilliant. I think with Super League, I've never had an issue with a coach, which is amazing. They are very transparent. You mentioned it's like journalism. Sometimes they'll say stuff that's off the record, that's just for context, but the majority of things they're happy for us to share with the world, which I think just enhances our credibility. Then I like to chat with my broadcast partner a little bit through the week just to see what we're doing. We have great producers that give us our rundown. Once I'm into the booth, the biggest thing I'm focusing on then is pronunciations, because there's nothing more important than saying someone's name correctly. The majority of Super League teams have audio pronunciations of players saying their names, so love to go through that. Championship is a lot more of the phonetic written ones, which are my worst nightmare, because as someone that comes with a foreign accent, I am not phonetically writing things the same way as the American comms person. And that's not their fault. Like, they're doing it perfectly fine how they are. But for instance, the one that's coming off the top of my head right now, because it's coming up right now, Natasha Flint, right? Natasha Flint wants to go by the shortened name, Tash. But they have it down as Tosh, which to me is Tosh.
Yeah.
But with an American accent, it's more like Tosh. So it's Tash, like Natasha. So like things like that drive me freaking crazy, because I read something, or even with rhyming words, like words I say don't necessarily rhyme the same. So first world problems, my struggle. So I always just go with listening in my booth. I mean, my color must get so fed up with me because I'm just literally clicking, saying the name, clicking, saying the name. Then I type my phonetic of how I want it to be. Then I'll say the name, and then I'll click it to listen, to hear it, to make sure the two are matching, and then I'll feel good. So it's a whole process. I've still butchered a few players' names in my time. But if there's one thing about me, if I mess it up once and get a text that I've messed it up, I'll make sure that I never mess it up again. Because as someone that seemingly, I mean, my last name looks pretty easy on paper, but in my college career, I was Charman or Charmin or Charmin the whole time. And I'm like, is it that difficult? It's Charman. So I want to make sure I'm never making a player feel kind of like I don't care, because I do care.
Yeah. No, it's difficult. My first ever game I did on radio, and it's hilarious now to think about it. It was Croatia playing Iceland. So you got the double.
Oh, so you had a lot of difficult names then.
All 22 of them. All 22 players that started the game were the most difficult names I'd ever seen in my life, because I was 18, right?
Yep.
So that was I probably prepared for that match for 60 hours the week leading up to it. And about 30 of those hours were sitting there, and I had recorded the commentators of past saying their names for, all 18 players that were probably going to be in the squad or whatever. And if I had, day of, we found out someone's not going to be in the squad or is going to be in the squad, we would go do that. But like it was the most difficult thing in the world for me. So I can't imagine, the difference of being from England and saying it a certain way in your dialect and your accent, coming over to the United States. Not, not it's their job or their fault, but they're not accounting for that.
But also, let's remember that English people do have a bad reputation, and that's the truth. Like, English people have a bad reputation of being commentators that don't really care. I mean, people still call him Debu Martinez in England. Do you know what I mean? They still call him Bruno Fernandes, even though every Portuguese person has told you that's not quite the way to do it. So I try and break that stereotype. Maybe that's something I'm doing to Americanize myself. I'm trying to have more respect for last names. But it's not always easy. There have been a couple that I've been really mad at when I listen back to the highlights and I'm like, oh, I probably didn't say that as crisply or as well
Yeah,
as I wanted to. One that I did do well was Dequa, though, right? I got Dequa
you
in my
did.
USL Championship debut of the season. So, we work on those things.
I was very proud of you. You and I were talking a little bit before that because I interviewed Albert last year. It's like it's Dequa. Like
Which
it's
I
a
was
hard name.
very relieved, as we know. So again, I am 30 years old. Sometimes I feel very immature with last names. So I always make sure I have it correct so there's no giggles at any point. So Dequa was perfectly done for that goal. So I was very proud of myself.
By the way, shout out Derek Gray. Derek Gray is one of the English commentators that does it right with the last names. He was one of the first and pretty much the only commentator when Bruno Fernandes was playing in that league. So a couple of things here. I want to be able to wrap this up and get you on your way but I want to hit on two more things before we get you out of here. There is a weird kind of audience that USL has gained in the last couple of years, especially since I've started working with USL in last season, but 2022, 2023, and this league started gaining a little bit notoriety. We've seen audiences of the very, very strong and passionate and knowledgeable with these clubs have been here forever. But a lot of casual fans that maybe are sick of MLS or maybe are just finding the club in their town or watching these games on television. So, what do you do to combat the appeasing the passionate fans, but also not trying to alienate, like you were saying earlier, the casual fans who are just trying to get into the sport and maybe find a club close to their house?
Yeah, I think that's a really amazing question. And it's something that is probably uniquely American based on the fact that English people kind of grow up and have football thrust upon them. So
Yeah.
I take great honor in the fact that I can potentially be the first voice that people are hearing in soccer, particularly with like USL Super League when it was such a, first season. There's a lot of people that maybe never watched soccer, but now all of a sudden they have a team and they're rooting for them. So I think I wear it with a great badge of pride. I am very fortunate that my previous experiences working with an inaugural club was able to kind of teach me those same things with the 3 years I spent with Charlotte was a really good moment of growth. I also think that the difference between being a play-by-play and a color is kind of helpful as well, because I don't have to worry so much necessarily about breaking things down. I'm more about just making it entertaining. So I think making sure everything I do is with passion, because I do really love what I do and I really love the opportunity to just watch soccer. So why not try and just bring that enthusiasm to the game? I think enthusiasm for the sport runs deep in both diehards and new fans. So that's fairly easy for me. I really make a huge effort. We're again really fortunate with USL to have access to pro referees meetings, things like that. So making sure I'm on top of the laws of the game, because you'd be surprised how many diehard fans maybe don't know the updates to the laws of the game. So being able to explain those to every fan and making sure I'm accurate on top of those things. And then finding the balance between when to talk about a player bio and when to kind of not. I know American commentary has a tendency to lean heavy on storytelling. So finding the balance of storytelling, but also play by play, and then just setting up my color commentator for success. I think it's really important now. And maybe part of the reason of beginning as a color commentator has really helped me with that relationship, but making sure I set my color commentator up for success, because at the end of the day, they're the experts. So they're either, for the diehard, they're a former player that the diehard knows and loves, or for the new fan, they're the person that is there to be the expert. So setting them up and kind of being, behind the shield of the color commentator is really important as well.
It's a really interesting thing being play by play because a lot of the time you have to be out in front, but sometimes you have to learn to get out of the way too, which is such a weird thing. And I've never done television, only done radio, but like it's such a weird, difficult balance to be able to find your spots and pick your spots. And that's where repetitions and just doing the job comes in handy. I want to ask you about the partnerships that you've had. jumping back and forth between different leagues and stuff, and obviously different projects and things you've worked on, how difficult is it to go from partner to partner, or have you learned to manage,
Oh, I love it.
who you're with?
I love it. And this is not a dig, but when you call a game with someone and only work with them non-stop, it starts to sometimes you can grind on each other's gears a bit, like
Yeah.
I'm a lot. So maybe I become a lot for somebody. So I actually really like bouncing off so many different partners. Everyone calls a game differently. So I have a lot of fun with it. We're also so fortunate. I mean, when you look at the level of analysts we have in USL, I mean, just to name a few, I work with Gary Bailey, who's a former Manchester United goalkeeper, Casey White, a former US women's national team player, calling games with her. Chelsea Cabacas has recently started doing USL Super League games. She's a former Colombian national team player. So I actually really love it. And I think it also tests me to be better because realistically, as I start my career, because I'm still, my shelf life hopefully is a good 40 years would be nice to be calling games in 40 years time.
Yeah.
Wow. It's like, I'm not going to work with the same person for my entire career because realistically, I'm not seeing myself going back into being a voice of a team as much as I love that. So building chemistry and learning how to build chemistry with everybody is really important. And then also I do think like mentally it's a nice respite. And that's not to be disrespectful. There are so many people I love calling games with, but I think it's nice to have that breather of just working with different people all the time.
Yeah. And there's another word, by the way, that we say differently. Respite, whatever. It doesn't
Oh,
matter.
I know. Oh, yeah, no, I know. Yep, I've been called out on that one. Hey, but
Jessica,
I'm practicing
you
my
have to
English.
be more American. You have to.
I'm
And
still waiting. I've got to get my citizenship soon, and then I can be like, God bless America, right? Then I'll sound really American.
then you can I don't know if your years in Carolina you said y'all or not, but
Oh, I
that's
use y'all. Y'all is a really, okay. That is so helpful. That contraction is beneficial because in English, usually will be like, you guys, or hey, everyone. No, y'all is like, at least I don't know if I say it as much as I type it, but I type it nearly every day.
see, I live in the South and I don't think I've used it in years, like verbally or typing. Like it's I don't know, I just always have stayed away from it because I've always tried to have the idea of not being from the South. I want people to
Which,
kind of
yeah, which
not
is
know.
it's not okay, but it's true that there is some snobbery with accents, correct? And different
Right.
things like that. And again, that's where I feel like I am fortunate that I came from an area that is quote unquote the Queen's English because people look up to that and it's like, doesn't mean anything. It's just about where I was born. So I don't know. I think it's a unique one. And I do love blending accents together. And I think that's something that makes broadcasts that have me on different because you are getting a little bit of flavor and difference in the way that it's going to sound on the air.
Yeah. But Jessica, I want to ask you one thing. It's not soccer related. Maybe it's not soccer related. I don't know. But if there's one thing all of these people hearing you for the first time or maybe for the fifth time, seventh time that don't know anything about you, what do you want them to know about Jessica as we wrap up our time here?
Okay. The most important thing about my identity, I guess, is like making sure that I can make people believe that they can do this too. And yeah, it's soccer related, but I come from a background where the only voices I heard for the majority of growing up were men and older men at that. So being able to be a role model, not just for girls, because I do believe in women in sports and want to be a role model for girl, but I want to be a role model for anybody that if they work hard enough that they can break into this career path. And I think turning on the TV and hearing someone that looks like me, sounds like me, is a little bit of a different age, a different background, didn't necessarily go to an elite school at all. Like Clayton State represent, I absolutely love the school that I went to, but it's not
Go
somewhere.
Lakers.
There we go. Someone did their prep work. Look, we actually just got a really big new women's soccer coach. So I'm excited for Ricky Clark to be the soccer coach. He's going to put this team on the map. But I think it shows that it doesn't matter your educational background. It doesn't matter what you did. If you work hard, you can outplay all of those things that are against you. So that, and then I'm a Reading FC fan. That is part of my identity. So Reading FC made me who I am today and all the struggles. So those are the two nuggets. One is inspirational, one is dire and suffering, but I am a Royals fan through and through.
That's the beautiful thing about England, right? Is like I love the people that love the club where they're from, right? Like it is so weird in the US because not everyone has a club where they're from, and people that like support English Premier League teams, it's difficult, and there's always a story of how they picked them, but ultimately it's a really cool thing to have clubs in your hometown, and that's what USL is trying to do. And full circle moment, people like you calling games is such a fantastic thing for not only the USL Super League, but definitely the USL Championship as well. So, Jessica, thank you so much. Have a great call tonight, and hopefully we'll have you back on again very soon.
It was my pleasure. Anytime. Thank you so much for all you're doing as well. And USL Super League, USL Championship, doing so many things correctly about bringing the game to everybody. So excited to be a small part of that.
Thank you so much for watching our program today. A massive shout out to Jessica for doing that in a hotel room on hotel Wi-Fi with hotel coffee in the middle of preparing for a game. Super grateful for her and her friendship the last couple of weeks to be able to get this show prepared. And she's going to do fantastic work in USL, hopefully for a long time. That'll do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching our program. If you'd like to get in touch with us on the internet, I am at Riley James IAC on X and Instagram. The show is at USL on Goals on Instagram. The parent company is at goals.tv on Instagram, at goals_TV on X. And of course, many great creators on www.goals.tv. That'll do it for us. Thank you so much for watching the show. We have a very special show next week that I'm sure you're going to be very excited about once I promote it on the internet. But for now, for Jessica Charman, I'm Riley James. If anyone cares, we'll talk to you next week from a very special location.